So the decision was made, and my husband at the time, he knew I couldn't just jump up and leave the Navy. So he took the twins back with him to his home city, and because I never met his family, I sent my oldest to the people that I grew up with. Now let me be clear and let me be fair, because those people actually treated my oldest son very well. I cannot deny that because it's actually a fact. They treated him very well. But I stayed in Bremerton to pack out the household goods and properly check out. It's a whole process for that. And once I was finally ready to leave, he flew back down to Bremerton so we can drive the car from there back to Philadelphia. That was the longest drive ever. Now, I'll be honest with you, we had fun. We actually had a lot of fun on that drive. Even though it took days, we had a lot of fun. And we talked the whole time. And then we finally made it to our destination, and life began in a new environment for me. Now, we had to move in with his parents when I first got there until we found our own place. But it's a spacious house, so it wasn't that bad actually at the beginning. Now, there were some issues with getting along at first, but we managed through it for a while. And I won't really speak on that because my focus is actually healing from the relationship, not so much the relationship with other people. I healed from that a long time ago. But I got my oldest son and our family was back together. So now I just wanted us to get our own place because I've never lived with anyone before. I wasn't really comfortable with that. So yes, I became the housewife that he requested, and he was the breadwinner. And I was receiving unemployment after my honorable discharge. So I had my own income, so to speak. Now, being in Philly really seemed like it was a turning point. It's like he turned into something else, somebody who I didn't recognize, somebody who I didn't know. We did a lot of sitting outside on the steps, drinking Heinekens at night, most days after the kids went to bed. And the neighborhood, it just isn't the greatest neighborhood, so I was ready to move. But the thing is, he seemed comfortable there. It was like there was always some kind of excuse as to why we weren't ready yet to get our own place. And that was weird to me, to be honest. I actually went back and forth to New York just so I can be able to deal with it. But I finally put my foot down and I said we needed to move. So we got our first place. It was an apartment complex with his aunt. And I enrolled my oldest son in private school because the neighborhood was rough. And even his aunt's kids, they went to private school as well. Now, my oldest was like a little brainiac. He was very, very academically gifted. From the moment he stepped in school all the way until he graduated from high school, he's always been very academically gifted. And everything went pretty good, until one day a child said to him, "Your mother." And he wasn't used to that because, he was used to growing up on the military environment. So he took his little test, he put his little pencil down, and he got into a scuffle. And they removed him from the school. Now, I still protest that, to be honest, because he was number one academically in his grade. But yeah, he had to go to public school. So in that moment when he had to go to public school, I knew for a fact that we were not going to stay in Philly long at all. Now, we didn't stay at that basement apartment too long because he lost his job at the cable company that his aunt hooked him up with. I think he either fell asleep or something like that. But unfortunately, we had to move back in with his parents, and this time it didn't go so well. We stayed there for a while, and once again, I was ready to get my own place. So we wound up renting this house that was a few blocks down from his parents' house, and it was crazy hood over there. But I was just ready to go, and he actually wasn't. So much so that I actually wound up taking the kids and we moved in because every day there was an excuse on why we shouldn't move in that day. So I just grabbed some blankets and me and the kids slept on the floor until the furniture showed up, and he stayed with his parents. And then he finally moved in, and then our journey began at that place. So shortly after moving in, we realized that the house was infested with rats. You can hear them running around the ceiling. They used to run around everywhere. It was so scary. And we used to try to get the manager to do something, but it was just so infested. There was an abandoned house. I think it was to the right or in the back or something. So I think that's probably where the rats came from. But nevertheless, I knew I wasn't staying there long. And to be honest, no shade, but the last 3 homes that we lived in on the military base, they were beautiful. They were safe. And we didn't even have to pay rent. I just paid utilities, and they were all in my name, and they were my responsibility, I felt. So I paid those utilities. Man, I started looking at my life going downhill, and That's when the problem started. Things went straight downhill once we moved into that house, and I knew this would be the last place in Philly that I was going to live. Things got real. Now, I don't feel that there's anything wrong with supporting your spouse, and sometimes you have to take the back seat and trust them to lead. But honestly, guys, I suggest partnering up with somebody who takes pride in leading the family. Not many women want to be in a masculine energy all the time. I know for me, my next and final relationship, it will have to be with somebody who's strong enough to lead. You know, someone who takes pride in being the man of the house, and they don't just want the title. I believe every woman wants a man to lead, but she has to feel confident that he's going to lead the family to greatness, not backwards. We were going backwards. Our whole quality of life was plummeting, and marriage or not, love or not, I had to make a choice. Either stay there and accept that life or leave and start over. And my youngest son has a lot of his father's traits, so I knew I had to get him out of Philly. You know, I wanted better for my kids. Every parent wants better for their kids. I wanted grass, fresh air, a school without bars on the windows or gates. That just wasn't acceptable for me. I grew up that way, so that wasn't acceptable. That's the whole point of being a parent. You want your kids to have better than what you had. And that's not knocking anyone else, because as I said, I grew up in the hood. I grew up in that situation. I just didn't want that for my kids. Now, I'm all for supporting your spouse's dreams and ideas, but should it be at the detriment of the family? Look, I may have been wrong in some ways, I guess, but when it comes to my kids, it was a no-brainer for me. Like I said, I knew that was the last place that I was going to live in that city. In all honesty, I actually was hoping that, you know, he would be on board with relocating to somewhere that's safer, you know, more aesthetically pleasant, and a slower paced living. I knew I had to get back to work. I knew I had to stack some money, because it was just a matter of time before I would leave. It was time for my masculine energy to take over, and that's that. The relationship was going downhill at a rapid speed. We had zero plans to position ourselves better. And to me, it just looked like we were about to get swallowed into that situation and have to just accept it. It was time for me to plan. I needed a job. I needed a newer car. I needed a plan. I needed a plan to get out. And that's one thing about me. People underestimate me. They do. Say what you will about me, but when I set my mind to something, I will not stop. I will not quit. I get focused and I do not stop until I reach my goal. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but when I have my mind set, I'm like a freight train with zero brakes.